I do know the Senator Ron Johnson, the Wisconsin Republican, ranking member of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, joining us. Senator, I do want to get into the former president's security, but I'd be remiss if I didn't follow up on some developments we're getting out of Iran, sir. Iran Supreme Commander Ayatollah al-Khamenei is now saying that the fate of the Middle East will be determined by resistance forces, the foremost of which is Hezbollah. He said that the group's solid structure cannot be significantly damaged by what he calls Zionist criminals determined by resistant forces, the foremost of which is Hezbollah. So he's not giving up, and he's saying that, you know, the players may change, even die, but the battle goes on. What do you make of that and the threat?
Well, first of all, the threat is real. When you take out one of the leaders like Nasrallah, Soleimani, that's just going to increase the resolve of Iran to continue to sponsor state terrorism. And unfortunately, the Obama administration, the Biden administration, I don't think they've taken that threat seriously enough. They always seem to want to throttle back Israel's ability and desire to defend itself. You know, you could have peace in the Middle East overnight. All it would take is for groups like Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah to stop firing missiles into Israel, recognize their right to exist, for Iran to give up its desire to become a nuclear power. Sanctions would be lifted, you'd have peace in the Middle East, but that's not what's happening. So you have to take these people at their word. They want to destroy, eliminate Israel. They chant death to America. They want death to America. We can't let our guard down, and we need to do everything we can to strengthen this country. And unfortunately, under Biden-Harris, everything they've done has weakened America, which has emboldened our enemies, emboldened people like Iran. That's what's happening in the world today. It's very regretful.
On that point, sir, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has apparently spoken now at least twice with the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant. And yet we're separately told that the U.S. was not, or more specifically the White House, was not given a heads up about these coordinated attacks on this Hezbollah compound. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's a very sad fact that Israel doesn't trust the United States under the leadership of President Biden and Vice President Harris. They just can't trust us. And so they're not going to put at risk their military plans in case the United States may sabotage it. Again, I think it's a very sad fact. People need to understand what's at stake in the November election. Are we going to continue down this path of weakness, which emboldens our enemies and has really set the world afire? Or are we going to strengthen this country again?
Let me ask you, you mentioned Donald Trump and you know, would this or would this not have happened under his watch? There are some concerns expressed on Ukraine in this crazy week of international conflicts that he might not be so supportive of President Zelensky there and might be more inclined to find a quick resolution that would have Ukraine accepting Russian you know, land gains as part of that accord. Now, he didn't say that, but he is a transactional, pretty savvy business guy. Obviously, President Zelensky did sound a little concerned. What do you make of that?
Well, I have a unique perspective on Ukraine. I was the only member of Congress that was at Zelensky's inauguration. I went back a couple months later with Senator Chris Murphy. At that point in time, President Zelensky wanted to do a peace deal with Russia. He knew he couldn't, you know, dislodge them from Crimea or eastern Ukraine. He's very realistic about it. He said it wouldn't be popular in Ukraine. Now, this is obviously before Russia invaded Ukraine. But again, the things have changed. President Trump is concerned about the Ukrainian people. Every day that goes by where you don't have a settlement. By the way, Vladimir Putin's not going to lose this war. The only way it ends is in a settlement. I'm not going to like the settlement, but every day that goes by, more Ukrainians die, more Russian conscripts die. I take no joy in that. More of Ukraine gets destroyed. So I think President Trump is exactly right. We need to bring this war to an end. I don't know what the Biden administration, you know, what it has told Zelensky, you know, why they blew up the peace talks that were going on in Istanbul, sent Boris Johnson to disrupt that. But this war should have ended years ago, quite honestly. It never should have started. It has to end.
So you don't buy to the argument you give the Russians an inch, they'll take a mile. They took Crimea, then they went after more land. That you give them some more land, they're only going to be eventually back in there getting still more land.
Well, first of all, I think Vladimir Putin understands he couldn't conquer Ukraine. He thought he might be able to, especially with Biden in the White House. I don't think he's going to want to take on NATO. You know, we certainly have not allowed Ukraine to utilize the full armaments of NATO. because again, we don't want a nuclear war with Russia. So this is very dangerous. We need to end the danger by ending the war.
All right, Senator, great catching up with you. Ron Johnson, the beautiful state of Wisconsin.